Not so fast. Welcome to Section 420, Talkin Yankees. Well, the season hasn't started quite yet. There's a couple more weeks left of spring training, but there's a lot going on, especially off the field. We'll get to that, some signings, some injuries, unfortunately. And how much do you know about the history of Yankee spring training? And the Yankees have broken the bank for both Luis Severino and Aaron Hicks, very unexpectedly, giving them extensions. Now for Severino, 4 years, $10 million per, great deal. And same thing with Aaron Hicks, except they're going 7 years on him, but $10 million per. Great, great deals for the Yankees. I mean, you're getting these guys probably, for undervalue, and instead of having to pay him like a boatload later on. And I know Severino's, hurt a little bit of that stuff, but still, I mean, he's a guy who's worth like 25 million. I mean, you talk about a guy who was kind of considered a Cy Young, award winner last year. Went in third place in the voting, but again, he's worth like twice as much as you're paying him. Still a young guy. Same with Hicks. Now he's a center fielder, switch hitter with power. Great defense, and by the time he's done, he'll only be like 34, 35. It's not like you're holding on to like some 40-year-old old dog, as they say. So, two great deals for the Yankees, again, very unexpectedly. And you're still going to see this as the years come eventually. There's even rumors that they're talking to the Betances camp, and eventually you'll see this, with Judge. You'll eventually see this with Gary Sanchez. You're going to have to pay these guys eventually, but these two deals, only paying these guys $10 million, both steals, great deals by Cashman. And then their agents to see how the environment is these days with free agency. It just seems teams are a lot more frugal now, not just like throwing money away as they used to. And they figure, all right, you know what? If we got a pretty reasonable deal now, let's do it versus going through all the drama. I mean, look what's going on with the Mets and Jacob deGrom. A lot of back and forth with camps. So like, well, we better get a deal signed before the spring training ends, or I'm not talking until next year. You get all that back and forth drama, and it's in the papers and there's rumors and all that stuff. So it just makes sense to get your deal done now, get out of the way, move on. All right, are you maybe costing yourself a little money down the road? Possibly, but you also, getting your money up front. First, also going through arbitration every year and all that drama. So, again, it makes sense for both sides. I just think the Yankees got the better out of the deal, especially with Severino and even Hicks. I mean, maybe he's worth $120 million. We only got him for $70. Again, brilliant moves by Cashman. As I kind of figured, the Yankees stayed away from both Machado and Bryce Harper, and it took a few weeks into spring training, but both of them finally got solved. First was Machado. Kind of an unexpected, the San Diego Padres. I mean, they weren't even on the radar. Machado signed with them for 10 years, $30 million per year, so he took about a $300 million deal. Now, he does have an opt-out after the 2023 season. So, to me, it's a case where, like, all right, he wasn't getting the big money, especially from the Yankees or anywhere he wanted to go, so he settled upon the Padres, kind of random, very random. They really haven't been relevant in quite a while. He'll stay with them for a while, but again, he has the opt-out 4 years, so he actually might end up with the Yankees or another team in a couple years. He just figured, let me get my cash now. I go to get traded later. Now, the Bryce Harper one's a little more interesting. Longer-term deal, 13 years, $330 million, except that the Phillies did not give him an opt-out clause, which is these days and age for a free agent to not have an opt-out is quite rare. So Harper and the Phillies, again, the Phillies were kind of rumored, so really that's not any big surprise. And it just took almost to the beginning of the season for both these guys to get signed. So, and again, I'm just happy that both of them, the Yankees stayed away from both of them. I didn't want either of them. I would have took Machado and again, you might see Machado a couple years again because he has the opt-out, but I was just happy both of them just go away, sign. Again, I'd rather the Yankees use the money to do what they did, again, in terms of extending Hicks and in terms of extending Severino, and then down the road, we have to do the same with Judge and as well as Sanchez. Now, fresh off the Hall of Fame inductees, you had Roy Halladay for the Phillies, number 34. Now, Bryce Harper is usually number 34, so Harper might have to switch to 3, so they probably want to retire Halladay. Again, because of the Hall of Fame, because he pitched in, and of course, unfortunately, tragically passed away. Now, you go to the Padres, they're talking about them saying they're very up and coming, they have a lot of young, great pitching. I just think it's just sort of like they had this money. It's like no one's really come to the ballpark. It's like, all right, let's sell Machado jerseys. And they do weird stuff there. They like a lot of those like camouflage jerseys and all that crazy stuff. So to me, the Machado signing for the Padres is just kind of a jersey sale bonanza. Otherwise, there's nobody wants to go to that ballpark. Nobody wants to watch that team. Now, they might have these young pitchers. They might have the farm system. Who knows? Maybe they're the next Houston Astros. Doesn't seem like that way. It's just let's sell camo jerseys. Well, the big news of the day and kind of really scary news of the day is that they had to shut down Luis Severino. Now, he was going to start a spring training game, felt a little discomfort, on the mound before the game, and he just basically said, I think he tried to throw like a slider or something, and his arm felt bad. So he was like, you know what, you got to shut me down. They took him to the MRI, and it looks like he has some inflammation around the rotator cuff. Kind of a scary thing, and no tears, nothing like that. So you're not really talking surgery at this point. So they gave him an injection, an anti-inflammatory, and this is going to shut him down for a few weeks. which basically means he's not going to be ready for the start of the season. Not a big deal. That's so overhyped, so overplayed. But again, he's your ace guy, and plus the Yankees just gave him a 4-year deal worth $40 million. So now you kind of go, plus he's your ace. You're depending on this guy. You think this guy's going to take the next step, and now he's like, all right, is this something that's going to linger on all year? And if you remember, almost like 2 seasons ago, actually, he did have some also shoulder discomfort. They had to shut him down for half season. He came back strong. So is this the same thing? Is this him just, not throwing much over the winter, and now you're starting to throw the arm again in the spring, and this thing flares up? So we'll see how it plays out. Again, no one really seems, scared at this point. Everyone's kind of play it week to week. But again, he's your ace. So when he goes down, you're kind of like, uh-oh. So, they'll shut him down for a few weeks. He'll probably start throwing again maybe late March, and then throw a few spring training games. And by the time he gets back, maybe it'll be late April. Again, not a big deal, but kind of concerning. And it's not really a big deal that Severino's not there for opening day. I mean, it really doesn't mean much. It's more nostalgic. He could have started the season and got a few weeks in, and then the injury could happen in the middle of May, and he's out for like a month. So it really doesn't make a difference that he's not there for the first game of the season. And another annoying injury is Aaron Hicks. I mean, you sign these 2 guys and they both get injured like right away. What are the odds? But it happens. You got to deal with him. His injury not as serious, lower back strain. So they figure, all right, you know what? They shut him down for a week, and then they figure, all right. Actually, in Florida, it's been a little chilly, and they've been, they don't want his muscles to tighten up, whatever. So they're waiting for it to get a few degrees warmer, and then they'll start let him swing in the back. He'll be back again. Not as drastic as the Severino injury, but again, what are the odds? You sign 2 guys and they both get injured right away. Maybe you should have signed them. I don't know. And another blow to the Yankees starting rotation on top of Severino is that now CC Sabathia is going to be down for a while. Now, if you might recall last season, in his last game he pitched, got into a bit of a beanball wall to Tampa Bay Rays. One of them hit Austin Romine, so he hit the guy back. Now, in doing so, he actually cost himself some money. He had a 155-inning goal that if he hit that, $500,000 would have kicked in. Well, he sacrificed that by getting thrown out of the game. So, cost himself some money, but got a lot of respect not only in the Yankee clubhouse, but across baseball. Again, he's just, maybe that's part of the reason the Yankees signed him. So thank you for that. So we're signing for another year. Who knows? But the main point is that he's not going to be there to start the season. Got the suspension, plus some health issues. He had the knee scope, and also the heart procedure. So yes, he has to build up his stamina a little bit. So he won't be there till maybe late April, May, similar to Severino. So you're going to see some of the young guys, a little earlier than we thought we'd see him. Luis Cessa, who has like 20 lives. This might be really his last shot. Always good stuff, but never good control. You got Jonathan Loaizaga, Domingo Germán, who the Yankees are very high on, as well as Chance Adams. He had that one good start up in Fenway last year. It wasn't that bad. He only gave him 2 runs. Maybe he'll be in the mix well. Only for a few weeks until everyone's back. It's really not a big deal, especially in April. A lot of starters don't go longer than 5 innings anyway. So if you just cobble 4 or 5 innings out of these guys, then you got some like, Chad Green who could bring in the 5th inning and then go right to that great bullpen. Would have been a great opportunity for Jordan Montgomery, but he's not quite yet. Remember, he was the lefty of the Yankees, but he went down last season with Tommy John surgery. But Cashman also said that he's probably not going to be ready to like the later part of the season, so definitely not going to see him anytime soon. But with CC down, with Severino down, it would have been a good opportunity to put him into the rotation, but he's just not ready yet. And you got the big battle at first base between Luke Voit and Greg Bird. Now, Bird coming back, he has to prove himself, and Voit really picked up where he was last season, ready hitting some home runs in spring training. Now, in a recent interview, Brian Cashman said they'll likely only carry 1 first baseman. So that means one of them is going to start in the minors to start the year. So it's pretty tough. And just the way the sound of Cashman's voice and just the way this Yankee roster is, I think they would prefer if Bird does win out on the competition. Again, at the end of the day, I think the numbers and the statistics are going to play out. But I think they'd rather have Bird win out, mainly because, well, he's a left-handed power hitter. The Yankees are 2 right-handed now. You add Voit, it's another right-hander. And plus with Bird, he's been in the system for a long time. You developed him, and he's had his injuries, and just he's been with the franchise for a while. And it's just kind of like they would probably want him to succeed versus, well, we spent all these years and time on him, and he failed. So you got to think with Luke Voit. Yes, fantastic pickup by Cashman last year, but it's almost like finding a $20 bill on the floor. It's like, well, you didn't really earn it. You lucked into it. It's great, but with Bird, you invested a lot of time with it. So we'll see how it turns out. I just think if all things being equal, Bird will want to get the nod again, mainly because he has a left-handed bat, and the Yankees are 2 right-handed, especially now with Didi down for a while. They're pretty much completely right-handed, so they probably would prefer Bird win out the job, and Voit in your back pocket, and we'll see what happens. Maybe someone gets hurt, maybe Stanton gets hurt, and you bring Voit up as a DH or something. And the Voit-Bird debate mainly has to do with DJ LeMahieu. So again, with Voit and Bird, you're not really paying them anything, so it's like dropping one's not really a big deal. But they did shell $24 million for DJ LeMahieu, so it's like, all right, we're paying this guy money, he's active, and like, well, we got to use him. So there's not really enough bats to go around. So you're going to need DJ LeMahieu just for the infield, just because you don't know if Tulo's body's going to break down, so you got to keep him there. So that kind of makes either Bird or Voit a little more expendable. Let's just say they didn't sign DJ LeMahieu, then you probably see maybe both of them on the roster. So, you know, I don't think they would regret that signing again because it was a smart move at the time. Again, you just don't know if Tulo's body is going to break down, so you kind of need that extra infielder. And Cashman also confirmed that, you know, the days that Tulowitzki's not playing shortstop, Gleyber Torres, who again, natural shortstop, playing second baseman, I guess he'll move over, play shortstop. Again, this is all until Didi comes back. And the news on Tulowitzki has been great. I mean, cracked a home run already, and just around the clubhouse, you know, a lot of guys looking for leadership. You know, he's not really an old guy; he's only 34, but you know, a lot of leadership. You know, putting guys under his arm. You know, teaching some of the younger players. Again, the Yankees are still a relatively young team. I know you look at Gardy, look at CC. They have mainly the two elders, but it's good to have a guy like Tulowitzki. He's been around the block for a while. Again, an MVP, you know, all-star caliber player, just to teach the young guys like the Sanchez's, like the Torres, like that. It just, you know, get him on the wing. So again, a great deal by Cashman. And he also said there were a lot of other teams interested, but you know, Tulowitzki wanted to come to the Yankees. He probably felt they were the most ready team for the World Series. So good choice by both parties. And again, just hopefully Tulowitzki's body could hold up for the whole season. We'll see how that plays out. Again, Didi is coming back, probably looking at June, July. And speaking of Didi, he's already starting to take some dry swings. Again, he's been taking ground and stuff like that, but it's more about swinging the bat. So within a couple weeks, he's going to start seeing some active hitting, but you're still looking about 2 or 3 more months until he can actually be in Yankee Stadium in a Yankee uniform playing games for the New York Yankees. And the reviews so far have been very positive for Gary Sanchez because he had the off-season surgery, coming back from a bad year. Well, so far, he looks great, hit a home run so far, and his defense has been good. He's actually been blocking balls in the dirt. I mean, is this the same Gary Sanchez? I don't know. In addition to Gary Sanchez bouncing back from injury and being good at spring training, also with Aaron Judge, has 3 home runs already. Now, you remember last season, he missed a chunk of time, got hit on the wrist. Now he came back in the postseason, and he was great, and it kind of, you know, relieved some of those anxieties. But you don't know about the winter. Maybe there was some little bone fragment chip that pops up, you know, 3 months later, some crazy thing like that. But that hasn't been the case with Judge. Again, already has 3 home runs, looked good this spring, and he looks like he's gonna, as long as he doesn't get injured, he's gonna be a type of guy he might even be in the MVP, you know, conversation. And it seems like, you know, our good old friend Sonny Gray's talking a little trash. Interviewed by reporters saying, well, why don't you think it worked out in New York? Same thing happened a few years ago with A.J. Burnett when he went down to the Pittsburgh Pirates, and of course always blamed the team. Well, according to Sonny Gray, they were making him throw too many sliders, and he doesn't really have great control of his slider, so that's why I was always ending up bouncing in the dirt and like that, stuff like that, and then everyone wants to blame Gary Sanchez. You know, well, maybe it wasn't Sanchez's fault, who knows? But, you know, for Gray to say that, it's a little weak. I mean, I guess you have to answer the question. But it would just be better if he said, hey, look, they gave me a great shot. I just didn't work out. I don't know. I would like to thank him and move on. To say that they're making me throw too many sliders is, I don't know, this is kind of weak. Well, shake them off. Throw a fastball. I don't know. And in similar Yankee traditions, they're bringing some old friends back. The Yankees have hired both Andy Pettitte and Carlos Beltran to serve as special advisors to GM Brian Cashman. What are they advising? I have no idea. The Yankees always do this. They bring back A-Rod, and then in spring training, they bring back some of the old faces. So, I don't know, maybe they'll help scouting, or Andy Pettitte will help a guy, you know, learn a pickoff move at first base. Not really big news for the Yankees, but it's just good, you know, like the tradition of just always bringing the old familiar faces back. And a little Yankee non-baseball related news, actually, the New York Yankees actually bought themselves back, so to speak. Well, they purchased at least majority ownership in the Yes Network back for $3.47 billion. Now, they're part of a cluster ownership group, which also concludes Amazon. Now, it could be a situation of Amazon just being a rich company that just likes to buy other things and throw money around. I mean, they got tons of money, but also, remember, you have Amazon Prime. So maybe this is some sort of situation where it's the Yes Network and we're going to deliver it to Amazon Prime customers. So we don't know what's in the background, but they bought it back from Disney, which actually owned 20th Century Fox, which also owned the Fox business. Crazy conglomerate stuff going all over the place, but this looks like, you know, Disney's just unloading this stuff. They actually took a loss on this deal. You know, Disney also bought out, you know, Netflix and just started unloading assets. So it's really good for the Yankees now. I mean, they have majority ownership of their own network. It's kind of a good thing. So they might have a bigger footprint in type of programming. They may want to introduce some new shows. Buy this show. Yeah, I'll sell it cheap. Don't worry about it. So it's really not baseball related, but it's just something, dealing with the Yes Network, and so you might see more original Yes programming. Buy this show. Buy it. And some sad news, not really dealing with the Yankees directly, but former Met Tom Seaver, Hall of Famer, he announced, well, at least his family announced that he's suffering from dementia. The Mets were going to hold like a 50th anniversary for the '69 team this season, but unfortunately won't be able to attend the event. And this overall looks like he's going to retire from public life. Again, a young guy, it's sad to see, a great Hall of Fame pitcher, great with the Mets, and kind of a heartbreaking thing. But even though it's sort of a Met thing, he did have some relations to the Yankees, indirectly here and there. First of all, he pitched from the Mets from 1967 to 1977 when he was traded to the Cincinnati Reds, which was very heartbreaking for Met fans. Now, in 1985, as a Chicago White Sox, a visiting player, he did pitch at the old Yankee Stadium and won his 300th game there in a 4-1 victory. And he won a complete game. Can you imagine that these days? These days would have probably brought the bullpen into the 6th inning. But no, he won a complete game, won his game at Yankee Stadium. And when he retired from baseball, he did serve as an announcer for WPIX, doing some Yankee games in the late 80s, early 90s. So, yeah, he's considered a Met more, but, floating around the Yankee Stadium a little bit, floating around the Yankee organization. Now, in 1986, funny enough, he was on the Red Sox team that eventually would go play the Mets in the World Series, but due to a knee injury, he was off that roster, so he actually didn't participate in the World Series, but was kind of interesting. And now in 1987, he did try to make a comeback, was in the Mets farm system, but this was ineffective, and he just kind of realized that, I'm done, time to hang it up. So he hung it up, and again, he ended up in the Yankee broadcast booth for a couple of seasons. So kind of sad news, but, it's just maybe to be an opportunity just to remember a great pitcher, and probably the all-time great Mets. But of course, the Mets did the right thing after retired. 1988, retiring as number 41, as they should have. So the few weeks left of spring training, but while we're on the subject of spring training, how much do you know about the history of Yankee spring training, which also includes Highlander spring training? So a few episodes ago we gave you the history of Yankee Stadium, the old and new Yankee Stadium, all the stories behind that, but we never talked about the actual New York Yankees franchise. Well, actually they're the Baltimore Orioles, crazy enough. Now in 1901 they were founded as the Baltimore Orioles, but 2 years later in 1903 an ownership group bought them and brought them up here to New York, and they became the New York Highlanders. Later on they would become the New York Yankees, but if you really look at it, that the New York Yankees are actually the OG Baltimore Orioles. Nuts. Now, the Baltimore Orioles that exist today will come later on, but for the New York Highlanders, they spent from 1903 up to 1912, bouncing around from both Alabama, areas in Georgia. See, Florida really wasn't fully developed as the automatic destination for spring training as it was today. But interesting enough, in 1912, the Highlanders helped the Red Sox open up the new Fenway Park. Now, the Highlanders lost, unfortunately, 7-6, losing at the new stadium, but the Yankees will kind of get the revenge sometime later, in 1923, when the visiting Red Sox came to the new Yankee Stadium. The Yankees christened it with a win as well. So, take that. Now, a year after that terrible place Fenway Park opened, 1913, that's when the New York Highlanders officially became the New York Yankees, which they are today. Much better name than the Highlanders, and I don't know what they were thinking. Maybe because they were in Washington Heights, and it's like the Highlands, which is hills and stuff, so whatever. But point of that, their first spring training as the New York Yankees was actually spent in the Caribbean, in Bermuda, against the temptations of Athens, Georgia, and Montgomery, Alabama, which is too tempting for the Yankees. So they want to keep the Yankees away from nightlife and anything crazy like that. So they figure, all right, let's put them on a Caribbean island and let them play there. So you would not do that these days, but I guess back then Bermuda was kind of boring. But maybe things got crazy in Bermuda, we don't know. But by 1914, there were no professional baseball teams in Texas, so the Yankees said, let's bring a little closer home, so they spent their spring training in Houston. Now, 1915 through 1918, they bounced around a little more in Georgia. I guess Georgia was like the Florida back then. But it wasn't until 1919 that they finally touched down in Florida, Jacksonville specifically. And of course, a year later, made that big purchase for that guy called Babe Ruth. Now, maybe Babe Ruth wanted some Cajun cooking, so they spent the next 3 spring trainings down in Louisiana. So all the spices and stuff from the Cajun cooking might have given Babe Ruth the run, so to speak. So they kind of moved things back to Florida and kind of stabilized themselves a little bit more formally down in St. Petersburg, where that served as the Yankee spring training complex from 1925 up through 1942. Now, in some of those early years there, Babe Ruth, wasn't too keen on taking the flag and fly balls out in the outfield. Basically, there was a lake nearby, and there was like alligators sunbathing near there, and he was just kind of a little worried about that, and I don't blame him. Of course, by the midst of the mid-40s, America and most of the world were involved in World War II. So to help with the war effort, a lot of organizations and people in business had to pull back, had to pull together and reserve things. So the Yankees did that similar. So instead of traveling down to Florida and having all equipment stuff going down there, they stayed closer to home. They were actually in New Jersey for the spring training, crazy enough. Now, it'd be freezing cold up here, so they used a lot of indoor facilities around Asbury Park as well as in Atlantic City. But they were actually playing out some games out in the freezing cold. So luckily, they only lasted for a few seasons, but that was sort of the Yankees' way of pitching in, going to Jersey. By 1946, luckily the war was over, and teams were starting to move out west. So, such like the New York Giants, they settled upon Phoenix for their spring training. As for the Yankees, they had enough of Jersey, and I don't blame them. They kind of went back down to the Alligators of St. Petersburg, which will serve as their spring training complex through 1950. Now, the Yankees would give the West Coast thing a try, same as the New York Giants, settled upon Phoenix in their 1951 spring training, but that was kind of a monumental year for the Yankees. It would be Joe DiMaggio's last and Mickey Mantle's first. But Phoenix was one and done, and they kind of went back to their normal place, St. Petersburg, which would serve as their spring training complex up through the 1961 season. Now, funny enough, after the 1955 season where they lost to the Brooklyn Dodgers, the Yankees had this little traveling team going on. It included, of course, manager Casey Stengel, but it had Mickey Mantle, Whitey Ford, Yogi Berra, even Billy Martin got to the mix. They actually toured Japan, went on a 6-week, 25-game sort of exhibition series, and went 24-0-1. Now, the one game was actually a game that ended in a 1-1 tie against some Japanese all-star team. But just think of this, the Yankees went over to play Japan, and they didn't lose a game. They went 24-0-1. No one even talks about that. Now, starting in 1962, and over the course of the next 33 seasons, the Yankees kind of shifted things, well, staying in Florida, but Fort Lauderdale. And this is the kind of start where you see like a lot of the old New Yorkers, moving, retiring down to Florida. Florida was building itself up as a retirement community, retirement state, and a lot of people come down and want to go see their beloved Yankees. So it was actually hard to get a spring training ticket, actually almost it is today. And that tradition kind of started when they made that base in Fort Lauderdale. And they would stay there for 33 seasons up until 1996 when they would open up the George M. Steinbrenner Field, which they play at today. So the Yankees opened up George M. Steinbrenner Field in 1996 in Tampa, Florida, which is where they still are today, using the dimensions of the old Yankee Stadium. I'm talking about the old one that closed in 2008, which is similar to the one they got now, but they just want to get the same dimensions so the players kind of get used to those corks when they come up here to the big leagues. And the first pitch thrown out by Phil Rizzuto in ceremonial fashion. David Cohn started the first game there, but the first win went to Bob Wickman. Bet you didn't remember him. So who knows how long they'll be in Tampa, but one thing's for sure, they'll never go back to Jersey. Of course, we know the Yankees play at the new Yankee Stadium, but how much do you know about the old Yankee Stadium where the Yankees had 2 runs from 1923 to 1973, took 2 years off to go play at Shea where they had a reconstruction period, and then came back strong 1976 to 2008. The New York Yankees didn't start off being the Bronx Bombers. They actually played across the Harlem River and up in Manhattan at the Polo Grounds, sharing the place with the New York Giants, starting in 1913. But then in 1920, the Yankees made a trade. They brought in this player called Babe Ruth. Started drawing humongous crowds, starting outdrawing the Giants. So then the Giants, who technically owned the place, handed the Yankees the eviction notice. Hey, get out of here. Ultimately, they decided upon a lumberyard right across the way in the Bronx. Now, based on the numbers they were drawing with Babe Ruth at the Polo Grounds, Yankee co-owner Rupert said, hey, why stick with the usual 30,000 seats? Let's build 60,000 seats. So they wanted this humongous stadium. And the stadium was built with a special concrete designed by Thomas Edison. So they opened the stadium in 1923. Opening day against the Boston Red Sox, the Yankees win 4-1. Babe Ruth hits a home run, and then later that year go on to win the World Series, in which future Yankee manager Casey Stengel also contributes with a home run, beating those New York Giants. A little revenge for kicking them out of the house. And they christen the place with a World Championship, something the Yankees will do later on in 2009 when they open the new stadium, christen it with a championship. So basically the Yankees should open a new stadium every year, and every year they'll win a championship. And Yankee hitters took to their new ballpark very well, eventually earning themselves the name the Bronx Bombers. Not Harlem Bombers, that doesn't make sense. Overall, the original stadium was very friendly to the home team throughout the decades, hosting a record 161 postseason games, and it kind of makes sense when you're in the playoffs almost every year. Today, this is Heritage Field, but right here, this used to be home plate for the old Yankee Stadium. And so many signature moments on this field. I mean, you could go from 1939, the Lou Gehrig July 4th farewell speech, I'm the luckiest man on the face of the earth. Again, a very sad moment, a very key signature moment, not just for baseball, just American history overall. You have 1961 Roger Maris breaking Babe Ruth's single-season home run record with his 61st home run. However, he did it after 154 games, so a lot of traditionalists at the time didn't really recognize it as much. You have the 3 home runs by Reggie Jackson in Game 6 of the 1977 World Series, and of course the infamous George Brett pine tar game in 1983, where he hits a home run, Billy Martin sees his pine tar on it, umpire calls him out, but the game got replayed later on, so technically the Yankees lost that game. And the Yankees had some down period, but then you have the Joe Torre years, the dynasties from 1996, you lose 97, but then from 98, 3 in a row. The infamous 2001 series here against the Arizona Diamondbacks with all the 9/11 stuff. And then finally, the last great moment at Yankee Stadium, probably 2008, the home run contest with Josh Hamilton, hit moonshot after moonshot after moonshot. And even though people will always remember him as a Texas Ranger, his greatest moment was here at Yankee Stadium in the All-Star game to close out the old venue. Now, as big as the NFL is today and the billions of dollars it generates, back in the 20s, 30s, and 40s, even through the 50s, pro football wasn't thought of much at all. In fact, it was college football was the thing. And Army and Notre Dame used to hold their annual game here every year from 1925 up to 1947, something they tried to revive at the new stadium. But it was the 1928 game where Newt Rockne gave that infamous "Let's win one for the Gipper" speech, which later go on to be in a movie played by Ronald Reagan. But don't worry, pro football. The old Yankee Stadium also put the NFL and pro football on the map. In 1958, what was dubbed the greatest game ever played, the visiting Baltimore Colts played the New York Giants in the championship game. Now, there was a field goal to tie it up. They went into overtime, and the infamous Johnny Unitas led a charge for the Colts to win the game, win the championship. In itself, doesn't seem like a great game or a big deal, but it was televised. And the game became so popular that after that, pro football then started to leap over college football. And Yankee Stadium was home to those New York Giants from 1956 up to 1973, when the Giants eventually moved out to Jersey. And plus, in the early 70s, New York City in general started going bankrupt. You had the beginning of what was called the Bronx's burning years, where there's a lot of buildings were being set on fire around here. So a really depressing time, a really dark period for New York City in general. But the man from Ohio, the ship owner, George Steinbrenner, comes along and then decides, well, why not purchase the Yankees from CBS for a measly $10 million. So he's got the team, but he's kind of got an old stadium that's, run down and haggard and beat up. So it was time for a renovation. So it was a 2-year project to reboot the old Yankee Stadium, which would later be known as Yankee Stadium 2 or Part 2, however you want to call it. But the Yankees still needed to play baseball, so where'd they go? They actually went over to Queens to play at Shea Stadium. So like they did with the Giants at the Polo Grounds, they had to share space with the New York Mets. And surprisingly, the Yankees went in those 2 years and combined 172 and 150, 22 games over 500. Not too bad. And in 1976, the renovated Yankee Stadium was all ready to go. In fact, they went to the World Series that year, but unfortunately was swept by the Cincinnati Reds. But the Cincinnati Reds were a much better team back then, so it wasn't really, seen as a big, disappointment. And good things would come after that with the 77 and 78 championships. So in 2008, they said goodbye to the Yankee Stadium grounds, the original that was built in 1923, as well as the renovated version that came out in 1976, a place that housed so many great events, so many important football games, so many important boxing matches, so many important religious events. But at the end of the day, it's all about baseball. So they had that final game at Yankee Stadium against the Baltimore Orioles, and the person who scored the last run ever at the old Yankee Stadium, the person they just re-signed for one more year, Brett Gardner. Hope you enjoy the show. Now, don't forget to check us out on YouTube. Click that little bell icon to get notified anytime we post new content. And don't forget to subscribe.